Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Review Crew podcast. It's Gabe here for a special solo episode, kind of reflecting on this movie journey I've been on throughout the year 2023. So January 1st of this year, I decided I would do a New Year's resolution. I'm not a huge resolution guy, but I decided to do one this year. I was going to watch every single big movie release this year. And because of that, I have seen some real stinkers. I have sat through You People with Eddie Murphy and Jonah Hill. I have watched Doggone with Rob Lowe, where it's just Rob Lowe screaming the word gonker over and over. And I even saw a movie called Viking Wolf. And if you held a gun to my head right now and asked me what it was about besides Vikings and wolves, I could not answer it. But I also got to see some really, really cool movies. So what I want to do here is discuss what I believe are the 10 best movies of the first half of the year. So my cutoff point was July 1st, 2023, and I'm going to discuss the 10 best movies of 2023 so far. But we got to start with some honorable mentions because it's actually been, in my opinion, a pretty solid year for movies, and just doing 10 simply wasn't enough, so I need to throw in some honorable mentions. First off, I've got Rye Lane, a super fun South London set rom-com. We screened it at Rom-Con this year, and it was a blast. It channels some of that energy of Before Sunset, but it's really snappy. It's got a lot of these really awesome cutaways, soundtracked really well with a lot of A Tribe Called Quest. Super enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. Next, we've got Renfield. This was one that the critics weren't crazy about, but I really enjoyed. Nicolas Cage as Dracula, Nicholas Hoult as Renfield, and kind of the antithesis of Rye Lane, because it's an anti-rom-com. It's a toxic relationship that Renfield is trying to get himself out of. I wasn't crazy about Awkwafina in it. Ben Schwartz is a little bit tacky as a villain. But where the movie really shines is just the play between Nicolas Cage's Dracula and Nicholas Hoult's Renfield. It's also super, super violent, and just really funny. Nicolas Cage is a superstar, and he shows it, knocks it out of the park by playing Dracula. He also played Superman this year in a movie that I promise you will not be discussed in this video. Next, I've got M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. I really, really enjoyed this one. I know I'm a bigger M. Night Shyamalan fan than a lot of people are. I enjoyed Old in 2021, and a lot of people found that it would be super annoying, but Knock at the Cabin is really, really awesome. And it's mainly because of Dave Bautista's performance. He's a super talented actor. I think he showed off how he's able to use his size to be fearful and imposing, but also, be deep and really look into himself in Blade Runner 2049, and he really, really channels that here, and I'm super, super big fan of his. Definitely not the last time you're going to see him in this list. But Knock at the Cabin was super, super fun to see him get a big starring role. I love M. Night Shyamalan. I love the book that this was an adaptation of. And also, just Jonathan Groff played King George III in Hamilton. He was in Frozen. That's really my experience with him, but he knocked it out of the park in this, and I'm excited to see him get some big dramatic roles after. Next, we've got Extraction 2, Netflix's big action movie of the year. I loved the first Extraction, and this one I think is even better. Chris Hemsworth is a genuine action star, and man, this movie is just directed amazingly. It's got these awesome one-shot action scenes. It's brutal, it's violent, and it's just so much fun. Next, we're going to go from so much fun to the direct opposite. We've got Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid. I like to call this a nightmare comedy because it's not horror, but it's definitely frightening, and it'll leave an impression on your psyche. It truthfully feels like one of those dreams you would have in junior high, where you're like running through your hallway and it won't end, or you walked into school without clothes on, something like that. One of those things that isn't real, but the emotions it's making you feel are very real. This movie has so many Easter eggs. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers, but it's got a crazy monster in it. This is one that I gave it a 7 out of 10. When it comes to digital, I'm really, really excited to rewatch this because of how many Easter eggs I caught in my first viewing, and I know there's no way I caught them all. I'm sure it's going to get better upon rewatch, but right now, not in the top 10. Next, we've got Creed 3, super, super fun. First off, Michael B. Jordan, superstar. He did a decent job directing it. I'm not personally a big anime fan, but I know he threw a lot of those anime influences into it, so I'm sure some anime fans really appreciated that. Obviously, discussing this movie now is a little bit difficult, and we want to throw in a quick disclaimer about everything with the Jonathan Majors allegations. We believe in letting the justice system, hand out the proper verdicts, and it's not our job to comment on them. I will just say, at the review crew, at OTN, at Syracuse University, we vehemently stand against domestic violence. Simple as that. But Jonathan Majors, as an actor, is really, really good in this. I think he's a perfect foil for Michael B. Jordan's Adonis Creed. Next, we've got a movie that I thought I was going to hate. I had no clue this movie was going to be good. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I've been playing D&D with the same group since 8th grade, and this movie really harnessed and channeled the zany fun that is playing D&D and coming up with a story on the fly. Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Justice Smith, everyone knocks it out of the park. This is just a fun movie. Hugh Grant is really fun in this, way more fun than, like, I kind of thought he was just taking a paycheck job. Obviously, it seems like he cares about his characters. And then my big shout out for this movie is just how awesomely they nailed the beast designs in here. The monsters of Dungeons and Dragons is a big part to the community, and they replicated them with love. And this movie is just so much fun. It's made by the Dailies, who made Game Night, a movie in, I believe, 2020 that I don't think got enough credit for how fun it is. So I'm really, really happy about Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. And it also has an incredible celebrity cameo that I guarantee you no one expected, that I don't want to spoil, but keep your eyes peeled for it. Definite pivot here. We've got Makoto Shinkai's Suzume. Like I said, I am not a big anime fan. I've only seen Your Name, which is, I'd say, probably Makoto Shinkai's biggest movie. Suzume was really, really enjoyable. It definitely had some issues. It was paced very, very poorly. You think you get to the end of the movie, and then there's a 1-hour road trip scene. So pacing issues definitely prevented it from getting into the top 10, but it's wonderfully animated. It's got a beautiful soundtrack and really, really cool characters. Somehow this movie makes you root for a human that has been turned into a chair. And that does not seem like something that would be very easy to do, but I really, really enjoyed Suzume. I highly recommend it, even if you don't like anime, because like I said, I don't really care for anime, but I really cared for Suzume, and I'm excited to see what Makoto Shinkai makes next. Another animated movie, the Super Mario Bros. Movie. This movie, I think, people are very divided on it, because some people seem to think it's one of the greatest animated movies ever made. Some people think it's really, really bad and just an obvious cash grab. I'm kind of in the middle. This was animated with absolute care. Illumination is spectacular at animating movies. Just, if you look at the texture in the clothing that Mario and Luigi are wearing, you can literally see fibers. You can see hair fibers and mustaches. So on a technical level, this is made really, really well. It's definitely made by people who care about Mario. But it also definitely feels like a cash grab in the sense that it is first off, a very short movie that is obviously trying to set up like a Mario cinematic universe, and maybe that's just the Marvelization of things and we just all need to get used to it, but that left a really bad taste in my mouth. But pushing past that, I also know that I'm not the right audience for this movie. My 9-year-old brother loves this movie. It's coming to Peacock on August 6th, and I know he's going to watch it over and over and over. So not for me. I said this in my initial review of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Because it's so short, I don't buy into Mario's emotional journey. And that feels really weird to say, but this movie does have an emotional journey for Mario. He's trying to earn the acceptance and love of his family. But it comes off feeling hollow, at least to me. Also, this movie is soundtracked with a bunch of, like, rock songs, like Holding Out for a Hero, and it comes across as weird. Koji Kondo has made some of the greatest video game scores ever, and they use some of his Mario scores throughout the movie. It shouldn't have been any soundtracks, all Koji Kondo. But some of the voice actors do a really admirable job. I'm not crazy about Chris Pratt's Mario, but Charlie Day, really, really fun as Luigi, and then gotta give it to Jack Black and how he played Bowser. We were all singing Peaches, 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 and Jack Black just knocked it out of the park. Next, we've got Scream 6. I'm a big horror fan and a big Scream fan, and I really, really enjoyed Scream 5, but Scream 6 was just an elevation for me. There's this trap I feel like we go into in horror where we put characters that used to exist in these smaller cities. For example, I love to say Jason Voorhees, Camp Crystal Lake. And then we move them into the big city. Jason Takes Manhattan. and doesn't translate well. So I was really, really worried when it seemed like we were getting Ghostface in New York City. And we got Ghostface in New York City, but boy, oh boy, did it work excellently. Just to set it up, there is a scene where Ghostface is in a bodega with a shotgun, and murder ensues. If you love horror, if you love the Scream series, this one is just excellent. Jenna Ortega is great, the cast is great, and the radio silence guys. I mean, they made Ready or Not, they made Scream 5, they made Scream 6. I love when they take on horror. Matt Bettinelli, Tyler Open, the guys, they're just super, super talented, and I'm excited to see what they do next. And then final honorable mention, we've got Transformers Rise of the Beasts. This is personally my favorite live-action Transformers movie, and maybe that is because Big Monkey Robot is a very easy sell for me, but I just found this one to be the most enjoyable. It's set in the 90s, and its soundtrack was a lot of 90s rap. I love Wu-Tang Clan, so obviously that's leaning it towards my favor, but the human characters were just so much more easy to buy into than Shia LaBeouf or Mark Wahlberg. Anthony Ramos does an excellent job. Like I said, I've really only seen him. He did a brief cameo in, I believe, one of the Godzilla movies, so I saw him in that. But mainly just Hamilton as John Lawrence / Philip. But he really knocked it out of the park. And then Dominique Fishback, who was really, really good in Swarm, and I highly recommend watching that if anyone hasn't. She's really, really talented. Obviously, you've got some of the rest of the cast. Peter Dinklage, you know, for me, I kind of felt like his voice was getting lost. I couldn't really tell it was him, but he was menacing as this villain. I love seeing Peter Dinklage play a villain. Michelle Yeoh was really cool as a giant bird robot. Even someone like Pete Davidson, an actor who I'm really not too fond of, and he did show up in Fast X in a cameo that brought a genuine loud groan from me in a movie theater because I was so annoyed. He's pretty good in this movie. And then Ron Perlman, and, playing Optimus Primal, which is a giant monkey robot. He somehow manages to do that well. So I don't necessarily know how that happened, but they absolutely knocked it out of the park. And that concludes the honorable mention. All right, so going right over to number 10, I have one starting that it seemed like many critics didn't like, and they screened what I have at 10 and 9, they screened them at Cannes, and I think those were just horrible decisions. At number 10, I have Elemental. I'm a big Pixar fan, I love a good animated movie, and man, this movie is just animated with such intense care. All 4 elements, water, fire, wind, and earth, grass, rock, whatever you want to say, all have very distinct animated styles. And just the clear intention that went behind each character just blows me away. Leah Lewis and Mamadou Ati, both relatively unknowns to me. I really only know Mamadou Ati from the newest Jurassic World movie. And I feel horrible that's really all I know him from. But man, they both knocked it out of these parks as Ember and Wade. And what I thought was just going to be a rehashing of Romeo and Juliet felt much more like West Side Story, which obviously is a derivative of Romeo and Juliet. But what Elemental is so willing to do is talk about interracial relationships and the immigration process. It's directed by Peter Sohn, who drew so much from his personal life, especially talking about that latter, about immigration, coming from an Asian family who came to America. It goes to some really bold and darker places that Pixar movies usually don't, especially with intergenerational trauma and just what we can do and how we pass that along. So I was sitting with my girlfriend watching this movie, and there was a child next to us, and she and I both kept looking at each other in shock just based on some of the stuff that this movie was discussing, because in some ways it really didn't feel like a kids movie, but it nailed the parts of being a kids movie that it needed to. It's a really cute romance between a hot-headed girl and a blubbery, emotional guy, and I personally can relate to that. I thought Elemental was super, super fun. It was scored really well. It had a cool original song by Lauv, who's an artist that I really, really enjoy. And it just felt like something new from Pixar. We're always complaining that Pixar is making Frozen 3 and Toy Story 5, but then they go ahead and create a really cool original world, and somehow audiences didn't think it was enough. I don't quite get that. And I really, really enjoyed this movie. Like I said, animated with absolute care, and I'm personally going to be very surprised if this is not what ends up winning Best Animated Feature at the Oscars this year, but hey, that's not until a long ways away, so right now we'll just keep going on this top 10. So at number 9, just barely making the cut because it released on June 30th. Like I said, my cutoff was July 1st. We have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Critics didn't seem to be crazy about this, so I went with a low bar, and man, I was so excited for this movie, and it delivered. It really, really delivered. So let me first start by saying this. I believe that Indiana Jones, the quadrilogy, before Dial of Destiny, was 2 really good movies in Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. And then there's 2 really, really piss-poor movies that drive me insane. Temple of Doom and Crystal Skull. And this movie sits perfectly in between those 2 in this new pentilogy. Indiana Jones, it starts with this really awesome opening scene that feels at home in any Indiana Jones movie. It is Indy on a train captured by Nazis, and then he escapes and he has to rescue his friend, played by Toby Jones. It's a stellar opening sequence. It does the one thing I need Indiana Jones movies to do, which is punch Nazis. There's a really awesome scene where Indy has a noose around his neck, and then there's a missile, and somehow the noose ends up wrapped around the missile, and it's going through the floors, and Indy's going to die, and he manages to escape it. Super, super fun, super enjoyable, high octane, and then it breaks, and it transitions us into the life of 70-year-old Indiana Jones, who's just about retiring from his job. I'm going to give some spoilers here, so if you haven't seen Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, really, if you haven't seen just about any movie I say in the top 10, it's probably a spoiler, so maybe click away, but spoiler warning for Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny right here. Indy has lost his son, Mutt, played by Shia LaBeouf, to the Vietnam War. So we're taking some really hard, difficult topics, and we're introducing him to this fantastical world of Indiana Jones, and because of the death of his son, his wife, Marion Blackwood, played by Karen Allen, is divorcing him. So serious things are happening to Indiana Jones. But on the day of his retirement, his goddaughter, Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, comes, and it sets off this wonderful quest for the Antikythera, also known as Archimedes' Dial, the aforementioned, the titular Dial of Destiny. And we go all across the world with Indy and crew, going from set piece to set piece. There's a rickshaw chase, and that's really fun, and I believe that's in Tangier. And then there's a big diving scene in Greece with a cameo by Antonio Banderas, who I was not at all expecting to be in this movie. So I looked over and I was like, is that Antonio Banderas? He showed up in here? And very small role, but super fun. And then we get our typical Indiana Jones temple scene, and we get him solving traps and everything that goes along with that. But then this movie, it takes a turn that I was not expecting. There's a lot of mentions of Syracuse in this movie, both Syracuse, New York, as a joke in the beginning, and then Syracuse, Greece, the siege of Syracuse, where the Romans came in and conquered the Greeks. This dial, the aforementioned Dial of Destiny, transports them to Syracuse, and there's a plane that the Greeks are mistaking for dragons, and Indiana and crew have to escape trebuchets and harpoons and everything that goes along with it, and it's just so much fun. Mads Mikkelsen was a perfect Indiana Jones villain. He was a Nazi, and he got his just desserts. That's all I need from them, and I really enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It felt like a perfect send-off for one of my childhood characters. It did everything I needed it to do, and James Mangold, I used to say he was sneakily one of the best directors working in Hollywood after giving us Logan and Ford v Ferrari. Well, it's no longer sneaky. James Mangold is truthfully, I believe, one of the best directors working in Hollywood. Going to another Disney movie, 3 Disney movies back to back. I'm so sorry about that for the anti-Disney fans. But now I've got, at number 8, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Marvel's been having some real tough times lately. I promise you, you will not see Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania on any of this list. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was a movie that I really just, I wanted to be excited for it, but I just couldn't be because of how much I was sick and tired of Marvel just bastardizing really cool characters. I should have had more faith in James Gunn, though, because he made, truthfully, one of my favorite Marvel movies ever. And it's because every character in this movie gets the proper ending for them. This movie sidelines Rocket Raccoon a lot, and, he gets injured by Adam Warlock, and so because of that, we get to spend a lot of time as he's dying and they're trying to find a cure for him. We get to go through his past. And comics fans, we know just how dark Rocket Raccoon's past can be, but a lot of casual fans didn't. And I was curious to see just how far and how dark Disney was willing to go. And boy, oh boy, they went to the full 9 because, man, this movie gets sad sometimes. There's a scene of a Rocket Raccoon that has been tortured and experimented on. He says in the first movie that he was taken apart and put back together over and over again. And he gets a metal plate in his head, and he touches it, and it's a baby raccoon, and with a childlike voice, he just goes, "Hurts." And it's just a punch to the heart, and you want to see vengeance against this high evolutionary. And speaking of the high evolutionary, Chakotay Awuji, wonderful, wonderful Marvel villain. He's got this god complex, but also this shame because he knows there's a creature smarter than him. Rocket Raccoon was figuring out stuff that he couldn't, and he hates the idea that one of his creation could ever be better than him. It's such a compelling idea for a villain, and James Gunn writes him well. And Chakotay Awuji, who I'd only seen in Peacemaker before, is an actor that I'm so excited to see in more things, because he brought so much gravitas to this role. The rest of the Guardians all do an excellent job. Chris Pratt, playing Peter Quill a little bit differently. He's fallen into depression, alcoholism, because of everything that happened with Gamora and Infinity War, and then Endgame being rejected by her. Drax is, typical Batista, hysterical. Groot is the only performance I enjoyed from Vin Diesel this year, Fast X. And he's got a really important, really awesome moment at the end of this movie. And I don't want to spoil this one too much because it should be coming to Disney Plus soon. And so if you, for some reason, haven't seen it, I really implore you, watch Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 because it's so much fun. Just a couple of things. It's beautifully soundtracked. It's shot really, really well. And the CGI is not jank. And I know with Marvel, we've been talking about that over and over. So it's so nice to see actual good CGI. This movie, I really feel like it's the first time we're moving forward in this new phase of the MCU. I feel like a lot of it has been dealing with the ramifications of the blip, and I feel like now, especially towards the end, giving us a new Guardians of the Galaxy, we're really moving forward into that great, beautiful sky that Rocket Raccoon mentions. I loved Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you're like me, you're gonna cry during it. You're gonna feel a lot of emotions. And that's good, because movies should make you care. And I really feel like I cared about the Guardians of the Galaxy and they just, truthfully, they felt like a family by the end of it. And I felt like we were welcomed into that family for these 3 movies, so I thought that was super fun. Hard departure here from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, because at number 7, I have Sisu, a Finnish action, war, kind of horror movie that feels very Tarantino-inspired. It's just truthfully about a gold miner who finds a bunch of gold, and on his way to try and take it to the city, he is provoked by some Nazis, and they try and take his gold, so they kill him. And then the Nazis want revenge, and he's chasing them back and forth. This is one of, truthfully, the most gruesome, violent, gory movies I've watched in a long time. It felt very similar to the Equalizer movies in the sense that it wasn't really fight scenes, it was just a kill, and then a little break, and then another really, really violent kill. This movie is not for a lot of people. First off, the protagonist barely speaks. He's got, I believe, one line at the end, and then it's just grunts and yells throughout. But he looks incredible and tells this story of an angry, violent, vengeful man who refuses to go off the mortal coil until he settles his debts, almost like a phantom. I really loved Sisu. I saw it with 2 of my best friends, and we were just going, oh, and throughout the movie as people were getting knives in the head, landmines to the head, horses were being blown up. There's the final kill, and I don't really think it's a spoil. The final kill, spoilers for Sisu though, in case it really does bother you. Someone's leg is attached to a nuclear missile, and it drops out of a plane, and they are blown to bits. And you see hands in the air as their body is just destroyed by the impact of this bomb. And truthfully, that's the way I felt after watching Sisu. It's such an in-your-face, visceral movie. Felt like a gut punch over and over. And man, oh man, it just gave me everything I needed a movie like this to do. I really enjoyed the Tarantino-esque chapter cuts. I thought that was really, really cool. And I just really, really enjoyed Sisu. It gave me everything I needed from a movie like this. It wasn't too long, and there was a very cute dog, and yes, the very cute dog is not injured, do not worry. I think Sisu is going to make a really, really good double feature with Inglourious Basterds, and it's one that I know I'm going to rewatch over and over. Next, we've got one at number 6. This is a movie that a lot of people have at their number 1. Truthfully, I couldn't put it there just because I'm really, really struggling to grapple with what I think is a really, really stupid plot point. And this is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Let me get my issue out of the way. This movie establishes something called canon events. Things that have to happen for a Spider-Man to be Spider-Man. I vehemently reject that idea. It is so against the idea of what being Spider-Man is. Spider-Man was created by Stan Lee because he wanted a character that anyone could be. Any teenager could picture themselves as. So I hate the idea there's a prerequisite for being Spider-Man. A lot of people are implying that this third movie is going to cause, a reveal, essentially, that those things don't have to happen. It's just a tragic fate that befalls all Spider-Men. And if that happens, I'm fully willing. I gave this movie an 8 out of 10 right now. We have it at number 6. If they do that, I'm fully willing to give this movie a 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, because this movie is perfection, everything else. But that idea is so against the idea of Spider-Man that I just cannot give it that perfect score. But besides that, let's talk about everything amazing about this movie, because there's so many good things. The animation style. I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said, but man, it just looks incredible. Everything seems like it comes right from a comic book, and it's eye-popping, engaging, and gorgeous. The performances are incredible. Obviously, Shameik Moore as Miles Morales, Haley Steinfeld as Gwen, but then there's some other new additions that are really good. Obviously, Oscar Isaac as Spider-Man 2099, Issa Rae as Jessica Drew, and then we got Spider-Man India that I thought was really cool. Spider-Punk, played by Daniel Kaluuya. Super, super fun. So Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is an incredible movie. It's a really good multiverse story. I'm kind of getting sick of multiverse stories, and I feel like a lot of us are. But I think it executed that very, very well. But I just really, really hate the idea of those canon events. So if they are willing to fix that in the third movie, I will retroactively go back and adjust my placement for this movie, because I'm always willing to do that. A couple shout-outs. I loved Spider-Cat and Spider-T-Rex. I just wonder, what are the origin stories for those two creatures? So besides those, I really enjoyed Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Just, my issue was those canon events. Hard departure. I feel like my list goes back and forth from like something happy, really cool superhero movie to gritty, disgusting movie, and nothing really got more gritty and disgusting than Evil Dead Rise. So Evil Dead Rise is, man, what are truthfully the grittiest, most violent horror movies I've seen in a long, long time, because the makers of this movie, Lee Cronin, who directed a really awesome horror movie called Hole in the Ground that I recommend people watch, he had some serious cojones when making this movie, because he there's always some rules in horror. We expect that the children won't get hurt. 3 children die in this movie, or at least 2. It's either 2 or 3. And you expect them they're going to be fine. And these kids die gruesome deaths. Evil Dead Rise does not pull any punches. And it still manages to have some of the comedy of the other Evil Dead movies. But it's also, truthfully, the most terrifying of them all. More terrifying than Evil Dead 2013, which I did not think was possible. Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland are the two superstars of this movie. Alyssa Sutherland is genuinely terrifying. She's got some incredible contortionist skills, and there's a couple scenes where she's like hanging from showers, and just terrifying movie. This movie is disgustingly violent, but it's also super short. It only comes in at 97 minutes, so anyone can watch it. I don't think everyone should watch it. My final just plug is it has a really awesome little cameo by Ash Williams himself, Bruce Campbell, encouraging people not to play the recording of the Torrendamento, but they do, and things hit the wall very quickly, and we get some Deadite violence, we get a giant spider monster, we get everything that you want from an Evil Dead, and then more. And you will never be able to look at a cheese grater or a tattoo gun or anything like that the same. Because this movie is just disgusting, but it's also super claustrophobic. It's set in a Los Angeles apartment during an earthquake, so you truthfully feel trapped. There's nowhere to escape, nowhere to turn, and man, just so much fun. All right, at number 4, this is my cop-out, and it's my list. I'm allowed to cop out. I have 2 movies that are really similar, and that is Blackberry and Air. I wanted Blackberry on the list, but I know it was really hard for people to find. Air is on Amazon Prime. So I'm putting them together because essentially they are the same story of a huge company that we all know being put together and how everything came to be. With Air, it's the Air Jordan 1s and Matt Damon, who plays Sonny Vaccaro, his quest to get Michael Jordan to be his, the star for his shoes. And then Blackberry is all about the creation of the Blackberry. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit separately. Air is wonderful. Directed by the incredible Ben Affleck. It's another, reunion between Affleck and Damon, who are just super talented, and they work well together. And they're both great in this. Jason Bateman, Marlon Wayans, both really awesome. Chris Tucker, it's awesome to see him back in movies. And then finally, Viola Davis playing Michael Jordan's mom. He even said he would not do this movie unless, she played his mother. So obviously, Jordan knows how incredible Viola Davis is at acting. This movie was just super fun, and it's available on Amazon Prime. I don't want to say heartwarming, but it's one of those movies where you can't help but just pump your fist in the air at everyone succeeding, because even though we know that Nike's a huge company, there are some dark moments of the soul, as we say in writing, in this movie where it doesn't look like everything is going to happen, but it does, and it's incredible. I love Air. And then Blackberry. Blackberry is the movie I think that has shocked me the most this year. Maybe with Sisu, of a movie that I just didn't know was coming out, and then it came out and just captivated me incredibly. This movie is so much fun. Jay Baruchel and Glenn Howerton. And while Baruchel is really good at playing this nerdy, overly trusting idiot. I don't want to call him an idiot, but, he's very smart with technology, but socially, he knows nothing. It's Glenn Howerton who shines in this movie as, truthfully, a hyper-capitalist devil. This movie scratches the same itch for me that, The Big Short does, and maybe it's my business student mindset, but, man, this movie is just so much fun. Blackberry really wasn't in too many movie theaters, so I know a lot of people struggled to find it, and it lost $2.4 million. But this movie is it's wonderfully written. So there's that first. It's also shot really interestingly. It uses its lens depth and stuff like that to make you feel like you're in the early 2000s. It really transports you. And Blackberry is one that I know is not going to be, every year I do my top, for example, for this year it'll be top 23, last year it was top 22, just based on the year. I know for a fact Blackberry is going to be in my top 23, And it's going to have to be a really, really good second half of the year to cause it to leave the top 10. That's how much I enjoyed Blackberry. Coming up at number 3, we have, and I want to say this, all of my last 3, I believe, are perfect 10 out of 10s. They all feel also very, very different. Coming up at number 3, Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. Obviously, if you don't like Wes Anderson, you are not going to like this movie. I just want to make that very, very clear, because this movie is a very Wes Anderson feeling movie. It's metatextual. It's a play within a TV show, and that's confusing. And yes, it comes off as confusing in the movie. But if you can look past that, okay, for me, it's not looking past it. I love those stylistic choices. But even the people who don't like that very Wes Anderson feeling nature, if you can look past it, there's a really, really wonderful story here about grief. Jason Schwartzman plays a father who has to tell his kids that their mother has died recently, and he hasn't done it. And Tom Hanks plays his father really well, and so there's a little bit of a generational clash. And just this movie, it makes you think about some things that you really don't want to, or maybe that we like to ignore. For example, Margot Robbie really steals the show in a very small role, playing the deceased wife, and an actress who leaves the show. But she's captivating, and when she has her monologue moment, you just can't look away. And the rest of the cast is phenomenal: Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, Jeffrey Wright, Tilda Swinton, Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, Adrian Brody, Liev Schreiber, Rupert Friend, and Maya Hawke. Maya Hawke was one of my standouts in this. She was just so charming and sweet. Steve Carell, Hong Chow, Willem Dafoe. Jeff Goldblum was an alien, and yes, you're right, that is a perfect casting for him. And just, this movie does everything you need it to do, whether you're a Wes Anderson fan or whether you just like a movie that talks about some real stuff. I adored this movie. I adored, like I said, the metatextual part of it. And it's not going to be for everyone, but it really made me think. There's a moment where a character looks out at the stage and asks, "Am I doing this right?" And obviously, in the world of Asteroid City and everything, it's about performance. But it's really relatable to just the human existence of, am I doing this right? Am I living my life properly? There's a moment where Rupert Friend's character, and they're discussing the alien, and this movie goes to some really beautiful places. He says, no, the alien isn't an American citizen, and it's not a creature of our world, but it's a creature of some world, and we're all creatures of some world. And I think that's just beautiful, and I absolutely adore this movie. And yeah, it really made me think. So Asteroid City, number 3, I highly recommend it. It's one of those movies that, like I said, I'm still trying to process my thoughts on, because it is very complex. But I knew I fell in love when I watched it, and I think for me, it's my second favorite Wes Anderson. Only thing better than it, in my opinion, is Grand Budapest Hotel. Coming up at number 2, this movie was just stealing hearts when it premiered at Sundance. And I can see why. We've got Past Lives by A24. It's directed and written by Celine Song, starring Greta Lee, Tio Yo, and John Magaro. And man, this movie is so ruminative on what it means to live and to love. These two individuals have fallen in love, and then they fall out of love because they, bounce back and forth. They go from Korea to America, and things just don't work out for these people. It's that idea of the right person at the wrong time. And it's beautiful and heartbreaking, because the one person, Nora, is our female lead. She's moved to New York City, and she's met the person she's in love with. She met, maybe at the right time, she met the wrong person. We'll never know, but she doesn't want to leave him. But then this guy from her past comes, and it's kind of that before sunset. I kind of touched on it when discussing Rye Lane, that walk and talk, and some people are going to find this movie really boring. I'm not going to say this movie's for everybody, but there is some philosophical and emotional depth here that, to me, I was left in a wreck. The end of this movie is a character just sobbing and falling into their partner's arms, and truthfully, that's how I felt at the end of this movie. That's just what I wanted to do. This movie it's beautiful and heartbreaking, and it's just kind of this. It's a little bit of a tug of war between what we have to do and what we should do, or the past and the present, and it's a really, really awesome examination of love and how shitty love can be and how beautiful love can be and how it can sometimes be both of them at the same time. Keeping with the theme of this episode and hard departures, we've got John Wick Chapter 4. Maybe the greatest action movie ever made, in my opinion, and maybe that's a crazy take, but I'm kind of sticking to it. John Wick Chapter 4 is one of the most high-octane, visceral, in-your-face action movies I've ever seen. Chad Stileski is a phenomenal director, and he takes us all across the globe in this movie. We're going to Tokyo. We go to Italy. We're in New York City. We're going back and forth. We're in, I think, Berlin for a little bit, too. And we are just seeing, in all these locations, fantastical, brutal violence. Keanu Reeves is an incredible action star, and he's really melted into this character of John Wick perfectly. Him doing all these stunts practically, the stunt driving, all these scenes of, for example, there's an incredible fight scene here in Paris where he has to fight his way up a flight of stairs. And you wouldn't think it would be as stressful as it is, but because you can see that it's very obviously Keanu Reeves, not only are you worrying for the health of this actor, you're also worrying, can he actually do this? Can he go up these stairs? And then he's joined by a phenomenal cast. Donnie Yen is I don't know why. I love Star Wars Rogue One. And so maybe I have a soft spot for when Donnie Yen plays blind badasses. But he plays Kane in this, and it's just one of the coolest additions to this universe ever. Bill Skarsgård is our main villain, and he's a prick, and you just want to see him die. And it feels so good when he gets his just revenge. Lawrence Fishburne is the Bowery King. Hiroyuki Sanada is wonderful as one of the managers of the Osaka Continental. Shamir Anderson plays a really cool new character known as Mr. Nobody. And then finally, Lance Reddick, who, passed away recently. He's not in this movie for very long, but he is a catalyst in this movie. And it just goes to show... it's not really a spoiler, but spoilers for John Wick Chapter 4. He dies right at the beginning of this movie. And because he had passed away right before the movie came out, there's an extra little punch and an extra little desire for revenge. And they gave him a beautiful, dedication at the end of the movie. And just John Wick Chapter 4, masterpiece. Every fight scene... And, I had a couple people who think this movie is too long. And while I can hear your criticism, because 2 hours and 49 minutes, long movie, I implore people, tell me what fight scene you'd actually cut out in this. That's my thing. Some people said, the length is too long, but really, what don't you want in this movie? I truthfully left this movie wanting more. There was way more that I felt like could have been delved into, and I'm so excited for next year's Ana de Armas starring Ballerina. And I think that the John Wick universe it's really going to become a cinematic universe. Now, I will say I don't want another John Wick Chapter 5 because I really like how we ended this one. But I'm excited to see where we go from here. I will quickly say my favorite fight scene in this entire movie. It is a bird's eye view shot. So it looks essentially like a video game. And there's a lot of video game inspiration in this movie, where John Wick has a dragon's breath shotgun. So it is a shotgun that is shooting out fire and bullets. And he's mowing people down with it. And it is beautiful and so incredibly rewatchable. And the movie, on the movie, Stileski announced that there's going to be an extended cut released at some point, and I cannot wait for it, and I love John Wick Chapter 4. So, that is my top 10 movies of the year. There's so many more coming out. Obviously, this month, we've got Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, we've got Oppenheimer, we've got Barbie, we've got so many different things coming at us all at once. And I know this list is going to change because we've got so many just masterpiece movies coming out. But at the first half of the year, I can't help but reflect on the fact that I had 20, when you factor in honorable mentions and releases, and we're only, halfway through. I cannot wait to see what the rest of this year has cooking for us, and I hope you guys stay tuned right here to the Review Crew to hear all our thoughts on the newest releases. We'll see you next time.